Hello guys, and welcome to another edition of Rage Against the Dice. It's Wednesday, or at least it will be when this video goes out, which means it's time for another RPG review from me. This time it's John Carter of Mars by Modiphius Entertainment, as you can see on the screen. It's the second game of Modiphius's that we're reviewing, and it uses the 2D20 system, but we'll come on to that a little bit more as we go. For those unfamiliar with the setting, John Carter of Mars is a fictional veteran of the American Civil War who gets transported to Mars. Features in a number of books written by Edgar Rice Burroughs of Tarzan fame. First appearing in 1912, with a 12th book due to be released sometime this year. Obviously he's not still alive and still writing them. These are kind of posthumously published. He's also featured in comic books, he's been mentioned in TV series, and even been featured in 2 films. The RPG you see on the screen is actually the second John Carter role-playing game. The first John Carter role-playing game, Warlord of Mars, was published by Heritage Models in 1978. Now before we get into the review itself, I do need to point out a few things. Firstly, I'm not familiar with the setting at all, other than what I've managed to retain from skim reading through this book. Secondly, Modiphius did send me a copy of the game for review purposes. That's the one that we're looking at on the screen. My initial written review was published on my blog quite a while back, so I'm hoping to add a bit more detail with this review. Thirdly, and this is something I've already mentioned in other reviews, I don't allow the fact that I've been given a copy of a game to influence how I review it. Now on with the review. Today we're looking at the full colour PDF, as the print-friendly version is in plain black and white, which kind of sucks to look at on the screen for you guys. So, this ain't Kansas, and I don't see no tornado. As we can already see, it's very different to the other Modiphius game I've reviewed, in that the book is landscape orientation rather than the typical portrait orientation that you would get in most RPGs that I'm familiar with, and you're probably familiar with. The artwork has this vintage feel to it, almost muted and sepia toned. And again, in breaking from the familiar, we don't have the back cover as the second page. What's going on with this? This is like witchcraft or something totally new. Here we do get a double page map of key locations in the northern hemisphere of BARSOOM. BARSOOM being the Martian word for Mars. The back 2 inside cover pages are the southern hemisphere of BARSOOM and their key locations. We'll probably not look at that because it means skipping through a load of other bits that we don't need to look through. Alright, so, as I said, 2 pages. Onto the contents page, and I'm sad to say it's not hyperlinked. To me, this page looks very clustered. Well, 2 pages in fact, look very clustered, and that lack of hyperlink does slow down that important in-game navigation. As I said in the Star Trek one, I can go to page 6, which is the contents, click on the section of the chapter that I need, scoot straight there, mid-game, much faster. Whereas in this, I either need to make a list of bookmarks, and then pull that up, select the one I need, scroll through them to find the one I need, or I need to write down page numbers for in-game reference, which is a whole lot of effort that I don't normally go to. So, as you can see on the contents, the book is split into 4 sections. There's a whopping 17 chapters, plus the indices. Now these 4 sections are character creation, game rules, background information on Mars, and the game's master section. I like the clear breaks between sections, but I do feel the background section may have been better served earlier in the order. As a player, how would I know what type of character I want to play when I don't necessarily know about the setting? Then again though, how likely am I to be playing the game if I'm not at least passingly familiar with the setting? It's the fine line to tread between appealing to the fans and capturing the wider audience. And I think Modiphius have done a decent job on this, Modiphius are a great games company. They do put a lot of effort into things and a lot of research. And what really helps is their lead developers for each game product are huge fans of the genres and the particular subject that they're in charge of. So Jim Johnson is a huge Trek fan. He's lead developer for Star Trek Adventures. And the guy from here, Jack Norris, he's the lead developer for this. And from his words on the introduction here, the foreword, sorry, it's obvious he has a love for the book and for his grandmother, who encouraged his love for reading. It's touching, and you really get his awe and wonder and excitement for the books coming through in this. Now, before we move on, I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to wash my hands. And remember, remain indoors. Don't think about the event. Wash your hands. Stay safe. I'll be back soon. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your little break. Or you've probably not taken one like I did. You've probably just continued watching like the hardcore viewers you are. So, chapter 1 is an introductory chapter. It's separate to the 4 sections because, well, it's totally separate. It gives a brief whistle-stop tour of who Burroughs was, the 11 John Carter of Mars novels, or the John Carter novels set on BARSOOM, and an explanation of pulp and romanticism in roleplay. There's a nice bit of artwork here in what has seemed a very word-heavy chapter. I mean, I know it's only 2 pages that we've looked at so far, but it's 3 columns of text. That landscape orientation does make it look very word-heavy. Carter here looks like a modern pulp gladiator as the main focus of the artwork, leaping across some less than impressed 4-armed green-skinned Martians. Made even more impressive when you think that those green-skinned Martians are around about 12 to 15 feet tall. Good jumping there, John. We get a glossary, an in-world glossary of keywords, and a nice little sidebar on Martian distances, the time measures, BARSOOM distances are SOFAD, AD, HARD, and KARAD. Time is TALs, ZATs, ZODs, PADANs, TIANs, and ODs. I'll be honest, that always tends to put me off a little bit in a role-playing game. I'm like, oh, not only do I have to know our days of the week, I've got to know theirs, and I've got to know their time increments, and I've got to know their measurements. Why can't we just say, well, that's the equivalent of, a mile. That's the equivalent of 10 meters. Do you know what I mean? Much easier. Whatever. Burroughs has obviously created them for his books, and that's why they're there, to keep it as true to kind of the source as possible. And then we've got the obligatory what you need to play section. It's similar to Star Trek Adventures 1, the special dice, although you can substitute with normal dice, counters for momentum, threat, and luck, paper, pencils, people to play with, characters they've created as well. Like I said, it's a 2d20 system, so we do get the 3 different eras of play: the Dotar Sojat era, the Prince of Helium era, and the Jeddak of Jeddax era. Now, these are respectively when John Carter first arrives on Mars, the first 3 novels, and then the latter novels, obviously, respectively. The game assumes you're playing in the Jeddak of Jeddak eras, as this is the in-game modern day, so to speak. Moving on to section 1, character creation. Now, it's only 2 chapters long, but they're pretty meaty looking chapters. The talents chapter taking up much of the space in this section. Character creation is fairly straightforward, and in about 15 minutes I managed to put together a couple of characters with only minimal flipping between the 2 chapters in this section. Don't know what they mean, because I'm not familiar with the setting, but, you know, I did knock up those 2 characters pretty quickly. Character creation is a 9-step process, as you can see on the screen here. You start off with your general concept, going through to a fully fleshed out character via your race, your archetype, talents, and a little sojourn into creating a descriptor. You've got a choice of 5 races. These races are, let's get through, red Martians, green Martians, yellow Martians, Earthborn or humans to you and me. There's also the Firstborn or black Martians. Earthborn are the rarest characters in John Carter of Mars. Red and green are the most common. There's 15 archetypes in here for you to choose from, ranging from your airship officer and envoy, going through to your scientist and spy. There's also a little bit on creating a unique archetype for your character. And John Carter does take a very bold approach to characters, in that there's no such thing as skills. It's assumed that if you would reasonably possess a skill or an ability, you have it. If you wouldn't have the skill, the task's either impossible, so you don't get to roll, or it becomes much, much harder if it's something that you can attempt without being particularly skilled in it. You know, like, I've never flown an airship before, but I've steered a car, I've steered a boat when I was much younger. I'm pretty sure that I can manage to steer an airship. It's probably just a bit slower to move. So I'd be able to make an attempt. Be a lot more difficult than normal, but I could have a go at it. Whereas something like landing an airplane, don't think I'd have a chance at that. So I wouldn't even attempt to make a go at it. It uses common sense. But that no skills thing, it's very unusual for role-playing games. From the role-playing games I like to play. So it is a very bold move from them. We also get 15 descriptors in here. You have one of these descriptors, and each descriptor adds +1 to 2 attributes. Between them, they cover every possible combination of the attributes. So, for example, bold gives you cunning and daring. Brash gives you daring and passion. Dashing gives you cunning and passion. Thoughtful gives you empathy and reason. And devoted gives you passion and reason. Excuse me. The penultimate step is giving a hero a flaw. So we'll skip talents. Step 8 is choosing a flaw for your character. The whole point of Pulp is that your characters are slightly flawed. And here we get around about 5 examples, but you are free to create your own. So, you know, you could be overprotective of someone. You could be soft-hearted, you know, or come up with something of your own, obviously with your GM's approval. There's a good walkthrough of character creation here as well. It's comprehensive, it's simple, it takes you through it fully. And then what we get after that are some sample player characters. If you don't want to make some characters, your GM just wants to go, do you know what, I'm going to chuck you into this adventure. These are the characters that we've got available. There's 7 of them here. That's pretty impressive. 7 characters that are sampled there for you to use. So you've got a courageous earthborn explorer, bold earthborn soldier. Odd that you get 2, one of the rarest, but I suppose everyone wants to play human. A canny red Martian envoy. That's not a northeast canny, you know, then oh, he's canny in like means cunning. Stalwart red Martian duelist. A charming OKAR spy. They're the yellow ones. Driven firstborn airship officer, so driven black Martian airship officer. A thoughtful green Martian guide. Giant, 4 arms. So those are the 7. If there's not something there that your players want, then, you know, spend that time with them to make up character, or make one yourself to add to the list. Like I said, I'm not 2 up in 15 minutes. It's not that difficult. Chapter 3 is all about the talents, and it's broken down into one of 4 grades. Grade 1 are relatively minor effects in the game, to grade 4, which are much more powerful. You can also have talents that have multiple effects within them. So for example, a level 1 talent here, you could add a D20 for a particular action. You might be able to move extra range if you're not blocked or hindered. You might be able to get a yes or no answer to a single question about a particular scene or situation from your talent. Grade 2, you might gain specific movement or spoken action. Ignore the effects of an affliction for a scene. Doesn't go away, you just ignore it. You know, think, you know, Indiana Jones when he's fallen down, like a large drop, he's hurt, but you know what? He needs to push through it because he needs to get on, so he ignores it until it becomes too much. Grade 3, automatically repair or recover a device or piece of equipment, or move to 2 additional ranges between you and the target, if not blocked or hindered. And for grade 4, you might automatically remove an affliction from yourself totally. Which, you know, an affliction is a major thing in the game, so that's quite massive. And then we go into the list of sample talents that you might use. Multiple effect talents, like I said. And we'll move on to section 2 in a moment. I'm going to have a drink because my throat's going a bit croaky and scratchy. Wash my hands, obviously, because that's what we have to do. Stay safe. You know, stay home, protect the NHS, save lives. I'll be back soon. You guys have a break, or just keep on listening. It's your choice. Welcome back, guys. I hope you enjoyed the little break there if you had one. If not, it's your own fault. I'm not going to stop you to go to the toilet until we get to section 3. Okay? Good. So, section 2 covers 3 chapters. These are all about playing the game. Chapter 4 is rules on how to play. Chapter 5, equipment. Chapter 6 is character development. The game is played using 2d20. It is called the 2d20 system as the basic roles mechanic, and d6s for your combat dice. The basic is add 2 attributes together, roll 2d20. Anything that's scored lower than the target number, which is the 2 attributes added together total, are successes. There's also the momentum and threat system, similar to the Star Trek Adventures game. And the dice. Now, the dice are exactly the same as in Star Trek. You've got 1 damage, 2 damage, 2 blanks, and 2 1 damage plus effects. Other games within the 2d20 system do mix that up a bit because of how the game is intended to work. But this is quite pulpy. Star Trek really is a bit similar in that mostly characters don't die, apart from Tashigar. Still bitter about that. Still bitter. So, moving on. Your attributes are your daring, your cunning, your empathy, your might, your passion, and your reason. There's complications. Test difficulties, difficulty 0, and why you might still roll for a difficulty 0. How to set the difficulty as the narrator. Rules on opposed tests. Difficulty modifiers that might change how it works. So, the lighting might be dark, or it might be really bright, so they can help or hinder. Obviously not in the order that I've just said them. Distance could be a factor. You're not familiar with the language they're speaking, might be very noisy, maybe random motion, the swing of an airship in the strong winds. Or if you're unfamiliar with it, or it's complex. Successes at a cost, you might want to voluntarily fail, because it will move the story on. Ways to improve the odds by creating opportunities, adding threat to the GM's pool to give yourself an advantage, or using luck, or working together. We've got the section here on momentum, things you might use it for. Nice little chart there on how to spend momentum. Bit of artwork. That really doesn't show you the scale of the Green Martian properly, because remember, it's like 12 foot tall compared to the 6 foot of a red Martian and the 6 foot of a black Martian. But it is nice artwork still, rich colours. It's an action scene. We then go on to threat. So what threat can be used for, how it's generated, action scenes, so turn sequences and orders. Now, here we get to a little bit of it's one of the issues I have with Star Trek as well, to be fair. Movement is abstract. And in this, it's more abstract than Star Trek. You've got immediate, near, away, far, and too far. Some players may really struggle with this, so the emphasis is on the GM to set the scene, provide enough detail to bridge the gap and help the players in each scene. It's a movement and terrain. Bits on the different types of actions you can take. Now on to damage. Damage is, there's 3 different types of damage you can take: confusion, fear, or injury. Confusion is based on empathy or reason. Fear is based on your daring or passion. Injury is based on your cunning or might. So it's a little bit more bookkeeping than Star Trek's simple stress track. But it's not a huge thing, because you'll know what type of damage it's doing. Bit more in depth in kind of stress and afflictions. Blacking out is an optional rule rather than dying. And there's also a way to simplify the stress. It's an optional rule. We also have luck. Now, luck points are a pool that each character will have. Mechanically, they are the same as Star Trek's determination, but since it's a pulp game, it's more thematic to call it luck than determination. Ways you can use it. Moving on to the weapons, technology, and equipment. It's not in the order that the chapter title suggests. So we get weapons, equipment, and technology. It's a minor thing. I'm just being nitpicky, I think. Anyone expecting huge tables of equipment and weapons, brace yourself. All we're going to get is a simple set of rules that all weapons of a specific type follow. Equipment's more of the same for things like medicines, torches and chronometers. But let's have a look. So there are some different qualities that you could apply to weapons. You know, it could be dishonorable weapons, explosive, fearsome, psychic, quiet, sharp, poisonous. But here you see, most blades, regardless of type, use identical statistics. And while an unusual blade might cause an increase in difficulty, the first time it's used in combat, generally all blades conform to the following rules. Blades are sharp. When an effect is rolled, a blade inflicts 1 damage to the injury stress track. If the creature doesn't have an injury stress tracker, it simply just deals damage. Blades inflict damage. Rather than the usual 1 damage dice, damage inflicted by a successful attack, as otherwise mentioned, blades other than daggers inflict 2 dice worth of damage. Daggers inflict a normal 1, and in the rare instance that a club's used, it doesn't gain a sharp roll. And blades are easily available, so it's only 5 XP to carry any single type of blade as core equipment. Firearms does the same thing. Firearms are fearsome. Firearms inflict damage. Firearms are easily available. There's rules for longbows, radium bullet detonation, incendiaries and explosives. But it's not the huge tables of equipment that you might expect. Equipment, like I said, is pretty much the same. Medicines and common items, how they are used in the game. And general preparedness, basically you start with the equipment appropriate to your nation, social standing and your profession. Technology gives us a bit more in-depth on the different bits, but again, a bit on airships, flies and equilibrium motors in games. Generic rules. Biological sciences is too. So, chapter 6 is 8 pages long, although given the book's propensity for being word heavy, still a lot of words within these 8 pages. Whereas Star Trek's all about optimizing a character from one adventure to another, in John Carter you do truly develop. You gain experience points, which allows you to add talents, change flaws, increase an attribute, or add some equipment to your character. And it goes into more depth about renown as well, reputation effects, accolades that you might get, such as allies, titles you might earn, Jedak, Jed, Prince, Chieftain, Jedwar, Odwar, Dwar, Than, Master or Mistress, Guildsman or Guildswoman. Using your renown to change the world as well, because it's pulp, that's what you can do. So, we're going to move on to section 3, I will keep on calling them chapters, sorry. Section 3 in a minute, which is the background section. But we'll take a little break. I need to have another drink because my throat's starting to go a bit dry again. Just recording me. Sorry. Recording these, especially after a day of work, does make my throat dry. So I'll be back soon. Welcome back, guys. I must really apologise for that little cough that I had there. As you can tell, my voice is a little bit scratchy, but again, it's hay fever as well because there's pollen about, dirty, dirty pollen. So section 3, we're 91 pages into the book. This section is where anyone new to the setting is going to need to start so that they're ready to play the game. 5 chapters, spread across 46 whole pages. Again, 3 columns of text per page as standard. Chapter 7 covers the history of Barsoom and again is very wordy. art pieces, while beautiful, are minimal. So your players are going to need to be in for the long haul to prepare for the game, and if they're unfamiliar with it as well. It does a fairly thorough job covering not just ancient history, but things like the entertainment, crime, architecture, etc. So ancient BARSOOM. Look at that. Underwater Martians fighting sea creatures. Awesome. Modern BARSOOM. Life on BARSOOM. So biology, naming conventions, clothing, food and drink, the religions that you might encounter, warrior customs, a section here on titles, slavery. Now, there is an important call-out box here on page 99. It's a very important sidebar because the fact that the game is trying to portray the source material kind of as accurately as possible. It also does need to downplay some of the more outdated elements and attitudes in Riceburrow's original source material. Bearing in mind this was written in 1912, you know, people had slaves. There was institutional sexism. You know, women were considered to be weaker. Like, I know some serious women, like Nate's wife, for example, Rachel. Scary woman. Definitely not weaker. Definitely not weaker. Lovely, but I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of her. It does try to downplay those, and kind of those who are sexist and are using slaves is like they're kind of meant to be the villainous exceptions or the nasty exceptions to the rule from the way the book presents it. Look at that stunning view there on the bottom of that page. But again, we've gone through several pages before we get to another piece of artwork. It's stunning, but so many words. Chapter 8 gives us more in-depth look at the green Martian species. These are the more violent and warlike of the natives of BARSOOM. The giant, 12 to 15 feet tall, like I said, tusked, four-armed species, arranged in hordes across the wilds of the planet. Get a lot of information on their culture and traditions, their laws and languages. We're also treated to an in-depth look at the four great hordes, well, three, in a single column on the little known third. That's THURD, not THRID. So, as you can see, we'll look at the Tharks for a moment. Most populous and prosperous of the four great hordes. But they're also the most unlike their kin. You get some notable Tharks that you might want to slip into your game if you're a GM, and how to use Tharks in the campaign. The Wahoon. Again, the notable Wahoons in your in the world and your campaign using them. Torquoise. You're going to get one notable Torquoise. Torquoise. Whatever. I'll let you decide how to pronounce it. I'm not going to come and kick your door in and demand that you pronounce it correctly, because that wouldn't maintain social distancing, and that's what we've got to do. The third, almost nothing is known of them. Do what you want with them, basically, is what that column is saying. Chapter 9 gives the red Martians pretty much the same treatment as the previous chapter gave to the green, only this time there's more focus on the 13 major red Martian cities. Well, 14 if you count Lesser and Greater Helium separate. They follow the rule of law, personal honour, courtly love. We've got their religion, their technologies, their military, because they are militaristic. And then a nice little sidebar here on John Carter and his interactions with the Red Martians. and how to use them. Then we've got the nations, like I said. So there's greater and lesser helium, with the notable heliumites. People like John Carter himself, Beja-Thoris, his wife, I believe, Cantus Khan, and Horvathus, etc., and how to use helium in your campaign. Zadanga, Keol, Dasar, Batarth, Manitou, Amho, Fundal, Duhor, Kunal, etc., etc. I'm not going to list them all because that will get very boring very quickly for you. Chapter 10 gives us the distant lands of OKAR and beyond. OKAR is the home of the Yellow Martians. There's the northern polar region and how to survive getting there through the polar storms, the northern exposure, until eventually you do meet the yellow-skinned OKAR. Key locations, their technologies, cultures, cities, things like that. Again, we've got another stunning view here, but again, the artwork's pretty few and far between. Now, the OKAR, obviously living in the very cold northern polar region, live in what's called hothouse cities. This gives a bit of a clue to the shield that keeps the heat in. Then the furthest reaches are the Black Raiders, the Firstborn, the Holy Therns, Chapter 11 is a fairly brief overview of how some of the other planets in the solar system fit into the game. The information is very scarce. It's mostly along the line of rumours and little is known about this world. Honestly, feels like a bit of a waste of a chapter to me, but it is only, 3 pages long. So we'll move on to section 4 in a moment. I'm going to go and have a little toilet break. Make sure I wash my hands afterwards, because that's not just a gentleman thing to do, it's a safe and sensible thing. We'll be back shortly, so enjoy your little rest. Welcome back. I've washed my hands. I've been safe and sensible. So section 4 is our GM section. Start on page 139. 6 chapters long, so it's the chunkiest of the book sections. Somewhat fitting for a GM section of an RPG book. Chapter 12 is your typical how-to guide. Not just running a game of John Carter, but it's how to GM in general. We get a double column call-out box as well on 5 rules for being an effective narrator. These are really good rules, and I think more RPG books should have these in there. So be fair, be exciting, it's pulp, be consistent. So whatever you do for one player, you've got to do for the others. Be unpredictable, and be cooperative. If the players come up with an idea that's going to bypass like an entire section of your story, but it's a really good idea, let them do it. Do stuff off the hoof. And we also get a nice bit about narrowing your focus on the campaign. So we get 7 different narrowed focuses here to consider. So, your forces of helium, spies like us, explorers, those sort of things. Some dramatic tricks, flashbacks, flash forwards, cutaways and dream sequences. decorating principle, I've never really managed to pull them off particularly well with any of my groups. So I tend to avoid a lot of them, to be fair. Mostly because it tends to be me talking, like especially if I do a cutaway scene, it's me putting on funny voices so that they can know that it's different people talking. You know, using the system, how it works, portraying characters, using your threat as a GM, dividing a group, advancement rewards, a bit on tone and theme. So what is plant-food romance, rationalist pulp, using BARSOOM. And this next bit here, crafting villains, is a phenomenal section. It's just so wonderful. Again, it's one of those bits that should be in every single game. Just because you've got a villain doesn't mean they should be monstrous. They should be evil but not vile. Well, maybe a little vile. Reflect something about the heroes who fight them. Not too many affectations, because, you know, too many make them comical. They're supposed to lose. Villains are meant to lose. Don't forget that, guys. If your villain is winning all the time and beating your players all the time, it's no fun to them. And that's one of the hardest things as a starting GM to get your head round, is knowing that it's not a game that you can win or should win. You're trying to make it enjoyable for your friends, for your players. It's brilliant. Nice bit here on selecting the eras. So again, recapping what happened in each era and when they're set. Some conventions of pulp genre. So out of the frying pan, so victory sweet but short-lived. Don't understand. Basically misunderstand each other at least once, the characters. Curse your inevitable betrayal. Someone you thought was a friend is going to turn and stab you in the back. Hey, look. And you look out. New places, beasts, characters, technology. Raiders attack, dangerous wonders. And a nice little call-out box here on threat, pacing, and pulp action. It's difficult to get right. How to expand the world as well, if you want to. And then oddly, I really don't get this bit, is this sources of inspiration section. I've seen them in a lot of role-playing games, don't get me wrong. I understand them. You know, if you are kind of playing in a, I don't know, D20 Modern, for example, that had sources of inspiration to get you into the right mood for the different types of campaigns you might be running. Vampire the Masquerade had sources of inspiration because it was a totally unique, not based on, well, not based on, sorry, it's a story to get into another time, but it was kind of a generic vampire setting. So there was sources of inspiration that you could read or watch or listen to get you in the right mood for the genre. This is John Carter of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Your inspiration is going to come from John Carter of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. There's a little bit on using myths and legends, other literature and cinema, but ultimately it's John Carter of Mars, for God's sake. You know, you're going to be using that as your main source material, plain and simple. I'm sorry. Chapter 13 covers the various beasts your players may encounter. Again, a bit on beastly measurements here to remind you that just how big the measurements are. and then we get them split into kind of the behaviour of them, the range of them, and plot seeds that you might see them with. So it is quite good in that respect that you've got quite a few different monsters here. Didn't stop to count them all. That's quite a lot. As you can see, we're now getting to the point where they kind of it's going to take a little bit longer to load the pages up as we skip, so I do apologise for that. It's going to make me have to be a liar now. Martian spiders, shrieking insects of the valley whore. Well, that's not scary in the slightest, is it? I mean, spiders are things of nightmare anyway, but if they shriek as well, I'm not going to be happy with that. Because that's the last thing I want, to know that the shrieking could be the spider, could be its victim. So yeah, as you can see, there are loads and loads of monsters here to lob at your players. I mean, to create challenging and interesting adventures. Throw at them and try to kill them. A bit here on creating your own beasts. Size, number of limbs. Some nice tables here, you know. I mean, 184 pages in, we get our tables, but whatever. Chapter 14 is Secrets of BARSOOM. Now, in here are some major secrets that include strange and lost technology, but also if any of your players are playing the black-skinned Martians, I believe they are, they need to read through this. Because, you know, they've travelled BARSOOM in airships, they know a bit more. White Martians, they're not a default play character. They tend to be too involved in some antagonistic plot to fit in with other races. But there are rules here for should you wish to include them. Yeah, basically weird secrets, things like mind control, mind reading, taxidermy for God's sake, whatever. Strange and lost technology, which could be electrical, chemical, mechanical, biological, or interplanetary. Chapter 15 is our Champions of BARSOOM, major NPCs your GM can use in games. From what I've seen, there's a lot of the major characters from the books here, with call-outs on how to use them in the different eras. It's split across the various areas of play as well. So, for example, we've got Dota Sojat era characters, so Deja Thoris at the Dota Sojat era. And then our little call-outs for using her in the other eras. John Carter himself. Prince of Helium era, so Cathoris, who is Prince of Helium, son of legends. Hinabtol, the Gent of Penal. Horvastus, trusted naval officer of Helium. Isis, who was a goddess, so I don't quite know why you would be using a goddess as an NPC. But you might, who knows. Sorry about the load time on this. It's because we're using the full colour, it's taking a little bit longer. The Jeddak of Jeddak's era. Gahan of Gathol, Jeddak of Gathol, husband to Tara. That's a decidedly normal name, Tara. No, because it's John Carter's daughter. And then we get our narrator character archetypes. These are generic NPCs, so not big named characters. But if you need an assassin, boom, there's one right there. Now that assassin could be Flume of Helium. It could be an assassin from wherever you need them to be, basically. Corrupt warlords, duelists, Green Martian warriors, holy Thurn priests, pirates and raiders, scientists and engineers, or a young noble. And then a little bit about how you adjust them for race. And what's nice, because this was kickstarted, there was a certain level on the Kickstarter, I'm not sure what, without going in and looking at it and interrupting this whole review, but at a certain level you backed, you got an NPC made for you to go into the book. So, that's quite cool. And there's a few of them in there. Oh, slow load time, sorry. But yeah, it was a nice touch that you can be immortalized in the book if you wanted by backing it at that level. So yeah, chapter 16. I'm not going to go too far into that. It's our introductory adventure, Mind Merchants of Mars. Like I said, I'm not going to go into it for obvious reasons. It's followed by chapter 17, which gives plenty of ideas for further adventures. Typically these would be within the GM chapter, so to see them given their own chapter is a nice touch. It's something a bit different, a bit of a break from the norm, which is nice. Excuse me. So, we're going to quickly skip to the end. Now, do you know what? The end of the rubbish page to look at. Let's go to the first one. Front cover. All in all, this is a solid game, and if you're into the setting, you'll absolutely love it. 2D20 is, as I said, solid. With this particular application of it, it seems to manage a pulp setting really well, which is a great achievement as far as I'm concerned. I've seen many a game try and fail dramatically, usually due to the crunchiness of the rules. Pulp does not handle gritty, like crunchy rules very well. You want to be able to say, well, do you know what? Yeah, do it. I'm going to jump off this upper balcony and take out those 3 guys down there from behind so that they're not seeing me coming, and then I'm going to combat roll, stand up and be ready to fight if any of them have stood up from it. And it's like, yeah, sure, do me this and this test, boom, done, yep, fine, great, succeeds. What you don't want is, well, you've got to roll acrobatics to see if you can tumble properly, and you've got to do a strength check and this and that and dull. You don't want it. You just want to get in there, be a hero, swing some punches, dive off balconies, that sort of stuff. So I got a bit carried away there. I do apologise. Really, I do have a few issues with the book though. It's a landscape book, meaning unless you opt for the deluxe physical version with its slipcase, it's going to stick out oddly on your bookshelf. Most games are portrait, so you've got the spines sticking out and they all line up relatively neatly. There are some exceptions to that, not mentioning names because I'll get angry. But a landscape one's going to really stick out, or to stand it up and line it up with the rest of your books, because you may have OCD. It's going to stick out like a sore thumb. You're not going to know. Well, you aren't going to know what it is because you know how many books have you got that are landscape oriented. But you're not going to be able to see the spine and know what it is at a glance, which is a bit of a bugbear. I also worry about how text heavy the book is. The artwork is few and far between, as you've seen, and mostly it's small in size when it is there. That said, the artwork is gorgeous. I would have just liked to have seen a bit more. And finally, I didn't really get a feel for the setting through incidental flavor text, like Star Trek Adventures gives us. Those call-out boxes where you've got reports from different people to different people. You know, you've got Romulan perspectives, you've got Klingon perspectives, you've got Ferengi perspective. You know, you get all of that from those little call-out boxes of flavor text. There wasn't any in this, so I'm not really feeling how a Red Martian thinks about this particular aspect, or do you know what I mean? They are minor gripes of mine though, and it is a personal thing. You might be totally different. Who knows? But like I said, the effort put into making the game really does show. The theme, layout and artwork is still very in keeping with the pulp setting to give it that feel as well. So it is a job well done from Modiphius. It's not my personal favourite. I'm not eager to play it. I'm not going to insist that we run a campaign of it. I've got the rules there. If someone's desperate to play it, or if enough people are desperate to play it, I suppose I'll go back and read through it fully and run something. But for you, if you're a fan of John Carter of Mars, or you're a fan of pulp on Mars, and ultimately that's what it boils down to, it's got to be on Mars using those Martians, natives of BARSOOM. Go for it, buy it, use it, play it, enjoy it, love it. I know at least one of our viewers of a previous one was keen to see this review. I hope it hasn't disappointed. Remember, these reviews are my opinions, you know, and what do I know? I'm just some guy with green hair at the moment who is sat in his spare room with a new microphone recording my own views and opinions on different books. If you've enjoyed this review, please leave a comment below, give us a thumbs up and a like. It makes me know that you want me to continue. I'm going to do something a bit fantasy themed next time round, because we've done kind of sci-fi with Star Trek, we've done kind of sci-fi with Judge Dredd, and we've done kind of science fantasy almost with John Carter of Mars. So some classic fantasy type RPG I think will be next, but I haven't decided what yet. Better get my thinking cap on though. That's it from me, guys. All that's left to say is thank you very much for watching through to the end. Hope you've enjoyed it. Remember, pray the dice gods may they smile upon you. Bye everyone. Hello guys and welcome to